Welcome to Beyond the Margins, Inside the Mind Shaping Modern Finance. I'm your host, Cherise Arnason, and today we're diving into the world of alternative finance and growth capital for SMEs with a leader who is deeply immersed in helping Canadian businesses scale. My guest is Ammar Sikandar, CEO of Kingsmen Capital Investments, a firm that specializes in financing and advisory for Canada's lower middle market businesses. Ammar, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you. Before we dig into the business side, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey. You came from a strategy consulting background at Bell and then moved into private credit markets, and now you're leading Kingsmen. What motivated you to make the shift to SME financing?
Well, I started off obviously in the telco space, strategic planning. I was one of the leads for Ontario. After a while, I guess I grew tired of the telco space and decided to take a blind leap into the world of finance. I was a recent graduate, and I was fortunate enough to get into a private credit fund that was in its inception and startup phases. Obviously, when you're in the startup phase, you tend to learn a lot more than just what your role is. We were very successful in growing the fund. I believe I was there for about 3 or 4 years, at which point I decided that I'm young enough. I have no kids, not many liabilities. And if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, the time was now. Took the leap of faith. I guess sometimes you just have to dive on one side sooner rather than later. And from there, fast forward, we're, I believe, on our 10th year now.
Congratulations. That's awesome. So I understand you're an avid sports fan. You've played competitive cricket and, of course, a Raptors fan. How has your sports or personal interests shaped your leadership style?
I believe I played a lot of competitive cricket and obviously indulged in many different sports, cricket being my core one. I've played in England and Canada and Southeast Asia, so different countries. I think one of the major things about being involved in competitive sports is it builds a certain level of resilience, competitiveness, and the ability to compete. When you play a higher level of any sport, I believe it kind of sets you up in a position where, you face your failures, but you have to work the hardest, train the hardest, compete the hardest, be smart at it. So it really builds in this resilience in you where, if you've taken a couple of punches, you're willing to take a couple of more. And I think in any aspect of life, it's a great driver, especially being an entrepreneur. The first couple of years are very difficult and grass is never as green on the other side. But eventually when you push through the difficult times, you get your breaks like anything else in life. And I think a big thing about sports is discipline. I think you can be as talented as you want, but the discipline drives you along with the resilience that you've built over the.
Absolutely. Definitely resilience and discipline are key factors for any business leader. Out of curiosity, what is one favorite book or podcast you've recently consumed that really impacted you?
A book that I still remember from my childhood. I forgot the author's name. It was called The Machine Stops. It was written during the Industrial Revolution. And at that time, obviously, computers were very new. Cell phones were really new. And we've come a long way since then. But it was a futuristic image of, you can really use your imagination towards it, but towards the development of technology to a point where we become reliant to it. And if you replicate it today's day and age, it feels like, we are in that stage, maybe as not as, fictional as it was stated in the book. But then again, it really makes you look forward as to what somebody would have imagined during the Industrial Revolution and where we're there now. The reason why it really stuck with me is because it always lets you imagine where we are today and to really look ahead and kind of with the improvements in technology and how fast it moves, it helps you imagine where we can actually be. And for an entrepreneur, they say you can imagine whatever you want. It doesn't cost anything. So really thinking ahead of time and seeing, people who were there during the Industrial Revolution where you had the steam engines and they were talking about a machine that, really controlled the world. So it was very interesting And yeah, it's always stuck with me. It's that one book. I've obviously read quite a few, but that is that one that really stuck from all those years.
Yeah, absolutely. That they would foresee that into the future is something that it's definitely taking place around us that we rely so heavily on technology now. Can you walk us through what Kingsman offers, what services you provide, what kinds of businesses you work with, and what you love most about your business?
So Kingsman Capital is a firm that, solely focuses in the small to mid-size businesses that right across Canada, all provinces. We have presence in, Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, and BC. Our focus is to provide, the much needed capital that small business need. The reason why we focus strictly on small to mid-size is because the Canadian economy is heavily reliant on it. One of the very rewarding parts of what we do is we get to create programs. And so we worked over the course of years to produce programs, to create programs that don't really exist in the Canadian marketplace. Considering that we have five major banks, there is, a monopoly of the banks. And so many entrepreneurs are really left out of being able to secure financing funds for growth of their business. And it's a fact that people don't know, but we are one of the very few countries in the world that penalize individuals for credit checks, for example. So if somebody were a startup operation and they were good to get financing from the banks. Your supplier, your landlord, there's a number of credit checks that are performed, after which you're no longer eligible, not because you did anything wrong, just because of the fact that you might have had multiple credit checks in the recent past. So for us, we cater to many people who are unable to secure the financing from the banks, and so there's a massive range of businesses that we are able to help. For me, I think the big thing that we really stand for is advocating for small business. We were able to help a lot of businesses during COVID when everything was shut down and help them survive through that time in collaboration with Export Development Canada during the emergency order. So we always pride ourselves in creating programs that really help small business grow and go to where they need to when the banks are unable to facilitate them.
That's wonderful. And I know, like you said, our economy is built heavily upon those small and medium businesses. I know when my husband and I were in our trades businesses that if you don't know about alternative options, for financing, you basically just rely on whatever the banks can give you. So it's good to get that message out there that there are other options available. Let's zoom out for a minute and talk about larger trends in the category. From your vantage point, what are the biggest growth opportunities you're seeing for SME financing or alternative capital markets in Canada?
Right now, the biggest challenge for small business, and it's not really their doing per se, but the end consequences, affect businesses. For example, with the bankruptcy of Pride Group, it was a massive logistics firm, drove the entire industry of transport into a higher risk category. So the banks have really, for the smallest of reasons, for late reporting or anything of that nature, have really taken out the transport sector in its entirety. And that has affected thousands of transport companies, for example. The other, with the banks tightening their belt, a lot of small business, such as restaurants that are coming up, they lack the collateral. And when they lack the collateral, the banks aren't as susceptible to securing financing for them. That's why we created, non-collateralized term loans and lines of credit. And our metrics are very different. We understand that as we go through the current economy, the current economic situation in Canada, the bottom lines have really squeezed up, tightened up. There are cases where, businesses need that short-term cash infusions to, as we enter the Q4, we've seen a massive influx of small business looking for inventory or expansion seasonal hires. The banks really provide long-term solutions. So when a business starts up, they are provided a CSBFA, which is the Startup financing, which only go towards equipment or leaseholds. But then after that point, up to 2 years of them being in business and being profitable, they do not have access to financing. That's when we really step in to help these businesses grow and have the capital that they need. So usually we used to see smaller businesses, but as of the recent past, we have seen larger sized businesses come to us to secure funding.
So, what would be the process when somebody comes to you as far as getting them some short term financing? What all is involved with that?
So when somebody comes for a term loan, we base it on a cash flow model rather than an asset-based model. So we really take an application and bank statements, 6 months of bank statements and up to $150,000. We're not requesting CRA or financial statements. We're strictly basing it on their gross revenues and giving them capital infusions based on that on standard 12 to 24-month term with capital injections after every 3 to 5 months, keeping the payments same. We keep extending them so they do have access to capital in intervals as and when they require it. Our other products obviously involve like term loans, line of credits as well. And the line of credit that we've recently created is probably only one of its kind in Canada, which is based on 35% of annual gross sales, which is in the metric that's used by anybody, whether it's banking or alternative lending.
So, what recent operational or growth strategies have really worked well for you at Kingsman?
Well, we've gone through a massive change when it comes to our internal operations. We have really adopted the AI models for when it comes to reading our data, evaluating it, creating metrics, trends of, for example, our highest defaults, the best clients to cater to. But internal operational wise, I believe everybody at this moment in time, some are early adopters, some take longer, but I believe our future will be in AI, whether it is based on evaluations, whether it's based on, outreach, whether it's based on partnerships. A lot of these things really will combine with AI to maximize and preserve the human capital that we would usually take to do these tasks manually. So we've taken these massive strides towards AI. AI is a very broad term.
Yes.
So, you really break it down into each segment. But I believe in the next 3 to 5 years, almost every business will have somewhat often association to AI. They will be using AI in one capacity or another, and that will be very prominent moving.
Absolutely. I'm hearing that right across the boards that some people say I'm using AI right now, but what they're referring to is just chat GPT. But then others have delved into so many other options that are out there for improving, like you said, the different processes that you do. It's awesome. Is there a specific tool that you're using now that you really found effective and you don't want to live without?
Well, we completely restructured and recreated our entire CRM based on AI. So that enables our advisors to read through data much clearly, understand some of the AI when we input the last 5 years of their business performance, it predicts the next five. And then we keep including different categories. It adds some of its own. But the more data we put in, the better it can read. So we've used it a lot for our evaluations. We've used it for our internal connectivities and also for our data filtration and underwriting processes.
It's awesome. If you could eradicate one inefficiency in the operation, then what would that be?
Efficiency or inefficiency?
Inefficiency.
One of the biggest things we faced was the clutterness of data. Once you start getting, 100,000, clients in your database, then when you're trying to filter through data, it's in different places, the lack of organization. We just recently eliminated that. So I'm very happy, but we're still not done with the project. Completing that for about 9 months now.
So a big
So it's been
project.
a very long process.
Yeah, but if you think of how much that's going to save you in the future, right? It's worth the pain. Where do you want Kingsman to be in the next 6 to 12 months? What are your major priorities or milestones that you're working towards?
So one of our, I guess, for our next fiscal year, one of our very, points we're highly focused at this moment in time is helping a lot of businesses that are currently not out of their own doing, but just either economic factors or just preferences of the bank. So I do put that in brackets, preferences, is to really save businesses in Canada. We're big advocates for Canadian support local. We're part of a organization called Support Local as well. We're on the board. We really believe in local businesses, our own, our country. We should really stand for our own. And it's very unfortunate that we have a hierarchy when it comes to the banks where there's only a limited. As soon as they feel as if their books don't balance, clients are then put into special loans. And there's so many. We are getting about 50 to 60 a day that are being taken out by the banks. And some of them are just unfortunate circumstances, not their own doing. So, we really pride ourselves, and our focus is on really making sure that we help and preserve as many businesses as possible during this really difficult time.
Absolutely. How do you get the word out there to let them know that you're a option to save them, rescue them from this situation?
Because as I mentioned, we're a grassroots organization. So there's a very funny story about how my business partner and I met. We visited every province in Canada. We've been, at the start of our business, we went door to door, city to city to promote our name. And that's really when you push hard over the course of a bunch of years. Eventually, when you maintain a good reputation, word of mouth spread. So we are partnered up with Dominion lending brokerages, mortgage architects, mortgage intelligence, Business Development Bank of Canada, ESMA Quebec. And so a lot of our business now, 50% of our business is, our online advertising, but 50% is through partners and referral channels that we've built over the course of the last decade.
That's awesome. Excellent. So, if you can wave a magic wand and solve one major challenge in the semi financing world, or in Kingsman specifically, which would it be?
Without question, it would be financial education. And I really think that many people don't understand the intricacies of finance. A restaurant owner might be fantastic at running a restaurant, but not their books. Similarly, transport, whether it's distribution, manufacturing, we notice that, people can be in a skilled trade and then turn into a very good entrepreneur in what they do. But where we feel that they get most affected is the lack of financial literacy. So financial literacy, we do promote that a lot. We train our internal reps. We work with a couple of organizations and promote financial literacy. And I'll give you a couple of examples as to why I say that. For example, a lot of businesses report a lot of revenue based on contracts that they have. But they fail to understand that recording it on their financial statement, for example, as an accounts receivable, gives them collateral that is really not a physical piece, but it's within our system. So we saw businesses that have done 3, 5, 8, and they've been growing 200% a year, 8 million, 10 million, 20 million. And during those 4 or 5 years, they've never really recorded an asset that they should have on their balance sheet. And if they did so, they could completely leverage that and have all the funds that they needed. That's just a small example. Understanding tax is a very specific thing. A lot of people don't understand decision making has direct implications with their tax balances. For example, we've seen many business owners who will issue themselves $120,000 as a salary. Now, that's a debatable subject, but then you would always say, hey, the taxes are so high. Why am I paying such high taxes? And you say, well, what's the difference between a dividend and a salary as a business owner? And you can completely differentiate that and change your tax bracket in its entirety. What can you write off? What can you not? So these small things really make a difference. And that's what I've noticed, that business owners are very good at what they do, but they lack the financial understanding to those small things that really go a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can relate. My husband was in the HVAC and plumbing trade, and he was good at that, but he didn't have any business background. And we've talked about that many times, how that they put students through the trades, but they don't give them any of that business acumen and education to be able to run businesses, which is what the majority of them seem to want to do, is get out and do their own business and give it a try. Absolutely, that the education is key with that. So in closing, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to business leaders, especially those in the finance and accounting world who are looking to scale, improve efficiencies, or adopt new technology?
Well, so the one piece of advice that I would really give is really adapt to technology very quickly. Things even in, AI is such a loose term. It just means AI, in my eyes, is how to make yourself more efficient. Keep a tight ship. People tend to go down many different channels, expand on their operational costs, keep a tight ship, use technology to your advantage. Technology will save you capital, which comes back in your own pocket. There was a piece of advice that I got from a very successful and they're a massive brokerage shop. Personally have always been very conservative, but one piece of advice, we asked him is how did all this change from, when you were really down and out. And he said, I had my last $5,000 in my company. I wasn't sure what to do with it. So I put it all into marketing. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, why would you do that? And he's like, if I converted one client, that would cover all my costs. To go back into the market, to really advertise, to put your name out, you know, run a tight ship, use technologies to your advantage. And at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is and I'm fortunate enough to have a business partner, but it's a very lonely journey. Really, not many people understand when you're going through a very tough time. And we live in tough times right now. The only thing you can do, I remember my father telling me when I started my business, it was so difficult. You take a haircut on your salary, barely making ends meet, and at the end of the day, in an entire year, you'll have many bad days and few good ones. But as you keep going out every day and motivate yourself, you have to motivate yourself as an entrepreneur, because you will have times when you're down and you're taking a beating. The only thing you can do is go back out the next day, motivate yourself again and again and again. And the number of bad days versus good days will eventually change. And after certain periods of time, you will get your breaks. But you only lose if you give up. And if you don't give up, you will not lose. And I personally have been through that journey where 2 years in the business, I was ready to give up. And there's no denying it's fine. It's true. And it's a part of the journey, right? And the biggest thing for any entrepreneur, when you make it there, always be humble. Just always be humble. Remember where you started. And that is also very, very important.
Absolutely. That is powerful advice. And I absolutely agree with what you said, how that businesses, it can feel lonely for business owners. And I remember one time when my husband, he had gone out for lunch with one of the other trades business owners in town here. And I guess they were sharing stories. And he came back and he was so excited because he's like, we're not the only ones experiencing this. It's happening to other people out there. So you're right. Absolutely. Never give up, though. That's the key to success. For listeners who'd like to connect with you, or learn more about Kingsmen Capital and what maybe you can help them with, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
The best way to connect is either LinkedIn, but my name can get difficult as we discussed earlier. It's Ammar, Ammar, and then Sikandar, Sikandar. Alternatively, we can always visit our website at www.kingsmen, Kingsmen, people usually mix that up, capital.ca, and they can get to know all about us.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode with Ammar, please hit like and subscribe, and be sure to share it with some friends of yours that might be interested in becoming part of our group of business leaders shaping modern finance. Until next time, I'm Cherise Arnason, and thank you so much, Ammar, for joining us.
Thank you, Cherise.